Welcome to the Love Pod, where inspiration, vision, and real connection come alive. Wherever you are, you belong here.
Welcome to the Love Pod, everyone. I'm your host, Nathaniel. I'm really pleased to be welcoming Stacy Heisey-Terrell here, who is a career ownership coach. And so we're going to have a really beautiful conversation, I know, especially after just having a few moments with her wonderful presence here, to talk about really the looking at your career and having an opportunity to not only transform your career, but shifting also from an employee mindset to an employer mindset. I'm really curious to see what will happen in this conversation. I know that I've had so many career pivots in my life, Stacy, that it's been a real kind of interesting, looking at my life from a bird's eye view and seeing how much shifting I've done. I've heard that sometimes writers go through many multiple career sources. I know a lot of our listeners, whether they're conscious parents or educators, there's so much change going on in our world. So this is a really important topic because I think it has a lot to do with purpose, right? So when I hear, what you do and the title of the show, to me, it's like really looking at this deep, some people might consider it the problem of the future with AI and everything, having really a profound purpose that gets us up in the day, that we feel good about, that energizes us, doesn't deplete us. So, anyways, welcome to the Love Pod. You're joining us from
You.
Philadelphia, PA. You have some snow on the ground today, and we're really excited to have you on the show.
Great. I'm happy to be here. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Would you like to tell us a little bit about why you do what you do and what brought you here today?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I am a firm believer that work as a big part of our lives, if we're aligning our careers, our work with our purpose, with our goals, our family's goals, then the world is going to be a lot better place because we're going to be much happier, purpose-driven people. So I found that in my own life. My background is in human resources. So for a couple decades, I spent my life doing lots of coaching and working with employees and leaders, but through a corporate lens, right? From the
Mm,
corporate vantage point. And a couple years ago, had the opportunity to still do what I like to do, but flip it upside down and now do that from the individual's point of view.
okay.
So, yeah, I help people have move to the driver's seat, align their career to their goals rather than align themselves and do all the backbending that we do to line
Mm.
up with our corporations, our organizations.
That's really valuable and really important that you've had, multiple perspectives looking at this. You've dealt with a lot of, people, you've seen probably some of the challenges that people struggle with in corporate
Yeah.
environments. I know I've had my challenges in like social work and education and feeling like I need to fit into this big kind of machine that's a cogwheel. So I love that you're teaching people how to get in the driver's seat. I think that's really important. What do you notice about nowadays, because there's so many new tools and with
Yeah.
AI and all kinds of emerging things happening, what is the major shifts that you're noticing from your perspective in this kind of endeavor?
Well, I work with clients across Canada, across the US, but some common themes come out from everybody, and that is just worry about the future.
Mm,
Um, Working in a large organization, a large corporation doesn't necessarily mean stability anymore. And we're seeing that, especially I've had some clients that work for the US government. You think anything's stable, it's, government work and it's not,
mhm.
right? And having to think about how to make those pivots, how to be nimble. So I have a lot of clients who are thinking, how do I stay on top of the wave and not get caught
Yeah.
underneath? And I personally believe that the way to do that is really to know why you're working, right? To
Mhm.
line up those what is this work doing for me to get me to my goals? Is it feeding me?
Mhm.
And where am I having to make those compromises? Am I okay with that? Or when does it get to be too much? And just being more aware of, where am I going? And is
Yeah.
this helping me get there?
Reminds me a lot when you talk about Stephen Covey's work, talking about the 7 habits of highly effective people, and also having, first principles in play and knowing like what is your driving force. So I'd imagine you have all kinds of, as a coach, all kinds of mental frameworks and strategies to help
Yep.
people kind of really get more clear on what is their purpose beyond their title or role in an organization, to
Yeah.
help them get clear on who they are and why they're here. Do you want to talk a little bit about how you work with people to help them
Yeah.
to find those things?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and also I think sometimes we start our careers in our early mid 20s and we have one vision for what life is going to be like, and we run with that and don't reassess. So then when we're in our 40s or 50s, like life has really changed. That vision might need to be updated
Hmm.
a bit. Maybe those goals when we had a young family or we're just starting out aren't our goals when we're mid-career or the
Yeah.
kids are starting to grow or life looks different. Um, and so I work with folks really on what is their why? What are those big goals out on the horizon as far as income, lifestyle, wealth, equity? Kind of, where are we going? How do you have what you need, but maybe also a little more of what you want in there? Quite often I get people mid-career who maybe the income goals are less important and lifestyle is a little more, or thinking about legacy.
Hmm.
What do I do with this last chapter of work? How do I bring people along, leave something for my family? Whatever those motivating factors are, we try to discover them while also starting to build the criteria, again, being aware of what is the criteria to judge whether an
Hmm.
opportunity is good for you or not. What kind of environments do you like to work in? What kind of people? And thinking more about that and being more intentional about how do you find that? Sometimes it's a whole new job, or I work with people who start businesses. Sometimes that's the answer.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's little changes like adding some charity work or some
Hmm.
volunteer
Hmm.
work that scratches an itch that you might not be getting in your day
Yeah.
job.
Yeah, I see that you really approach it with a holistic lens and really look at all the supports that, are needed in a life to really make it
Yeah.
a life you feel good about, right? I also
Yeah.
noticed in
Yeah.
your background you have, the entrepreneurship source. You mentioned that as a potential
Yeah.
option for some folks, and it does require a certain kind of a mindset and emotional grit, I would say, to be an
Yes.
entrepreneur. And is that your book also, your career revolution?
Yeah, well, it's my organization's book.
Okay.
So, written by our founder and lots of other entrepreneur source
Okay.
coaches.
Beautiful.
But yeah, we talk about kind of a revolution, this revolutionary mindset of making work work for you
Mm,
versus you working for work.
yeah.
And a lot of times that does involve, how could I go out on my own? Could
Yeah.
I create a work culture, accomplish my goals my own way?
Hmm. Hmm.
And for a lot of people, that's super scary to think about. Maybe we haven't had the luxury of time to consider that, but for many of my clients, like that's kind of freeing to
Yeah.
know, like, oh, I could just cut my own path, right? I
Yeah.
don't have to go down this paved road.
So it sounds like you open a lot
Mm.
of options in terms of possibility for people looking at, different maybe. And what I learned, in opening the door of entrepreneurship is there was a lot that I didn't know that I didn't know, and I was aware of that kind of,
Right. Yeah.
framework. It is diving into the unknown for a lot of people. But it sounds like you can help maybe smooth that journey out for people, having that kind of coaching lens to help people make those transitions, especially if you have families or whatnot. It isn't always the smoothest ride when you go at it alone. So I know the value
Right.
of coaching. I'm wondering, like, Stacy, how, in this work that you do, you're off obviously seeing a lot of people through transformations and going through a lot of growth stages. So that must be very rewarding. I'm wondering, what do you find the most uplifting part of your work, and like what gets you excited, first thing in the rising of the day? Like what do you look forward to in helping people, and why do you do what you do?
Yeah, yeah. I love that question. So I find that for a lot of us, we've kind of been taught to put the blinders on, right? Like we pick a career channel and we
Mhm.
stick with that channel. And for me, it's really exciting being in that process when people are widening their
Mhm.
blinders or even taking them off and having those moments where we're on Zoom and you can see in their face, like, oh, I never thought of this, or I never saw this option before, or gosh, the world is a much bigger place than I had been living in. And to me, that is that thrill of watching someone go,
Mm.
oh,
Okay.
gosh, there's a room in here. I can turn the light on. I never knew this was
Yeah.
here. And getting very excited about, oh, well, how do we learn more? Who do we talk to have more gather more data about this option. Could this be for me?
And that's really interesting. Yeah, I mean, to me, I would relate that from my lenses, talking about inspiration when you kind of realize, I don't know if it was Alan Watts that talks about like we all live in these mansions, but we have become accustomed to staying in the basement and think that that is the limitation of our
I
of our
like
journey,
that.
right? And I
Right.
really believe
Yeah.
like so my background in Indigenous wellness has really been you're talking to more of a no box black sheep kind of guy. I've
Yeah. Yeah.
danced around a lot, and I didn't really have a plan other than I wanted to know what the truth was. And so
Yeah.
like even in my academics and journey and everything, I was more interested in enlightenment and understanding and coming to a deeper comprehension of our universe than most of my peers and even most of the grown-ups around me. So I always felt kind of like out of place,
Yeah.
belonging was a challenge for me until I found Indigenous circles and could talk to some elders and really start sharing
Hmm.
my journey. And what I realized though, because talking about this a little bit of the conditioning through the educational institutions that I went through, there was a lot of conditioning around putting those blinders on and really
Yeah.
developing more of a limited belief of who I was. And a lot of it had to
Hmm.
do with um, taking on the role of overachieving, like basically, you know, in the gradation system, like being valued based on my performance, not simply for being who I was. And I feel
Hmm.
like a lot of
Hmm.
what I've noticed in corporate environments is, high achievers take on badges like stress um, uh, as like almost a thing to be proud of, and a lot of them are
Yeah.
burning on empty, and they're flying all over the world. They're trying to meet all these larger goals, and yet they're neglecting maybe the things that make them truly fulfilled, and including the undercurrent of what I've heard you talk a lot about. We haven't used the word, but relationships, because your
Hmm. Hmm.
relationship with your work and all the people you're working with, and also how that affects your relationships with your family. All of
Yeah.
that is very important to this greater whole whole picture that you're talking about, right?
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
that must be very rewarding to see people go through these transformations and realize some of these more expansive possibilities that they can have. Do you find like
Absolutely.
with your ideal client, are a lot of them, like you mentioned, transitioning, maybe they're in a decade where they have children, they're starting to think of their legacy, they're starting to think of more things that they like to leave in this world and maybe make it a better place. What have been some of the like really beautiful stories that you've witnessed and help unfold? Do you want to share one or two of them?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. Well, and I think, what you touched on, Nathaniel, the idea of defining your success the way the people around you have defined it.
Mhm.
So often, our jobs will tell you this is what success looks like. And we go,
Mhm.
oh, okay. Our families or school. And I get a lot of folks who are like, I feel like I've hit success, but
Mm,
it doesn't feel right. You know, there's got to be something more. This still feels kind of empty, or
mm,
I should be happy, but I'm not happy.
mm,
What's wrong with me? So I get a lot of that. Like, I should be happy. Why aren't I happy? And it's like, well, because maybe your view of success is quite a bit, sometimes quite a bit different than that idea.
yeah.
And I recently had a client, a young man, um, and he felt like that. Like he kept trying new things, right? So he got out of college, was really successful in college, immediately got a job, and it wasn't exactly the thing. So he said, I'll go to grad school. So he went to grad school. He did terrific in grad school. He was a planner. Immediately got a job, and it wasn't exactly the right thing, so he bounced around a little bit and then went through a layoff
Mm,
and kind of hit this bottom of like, well, what am I do I go back to school? Like,
mm,
why? Like, I'm seeing my peers are successful, my wife is successful, like, what am I doing? And somehow we found each other at just the right time and really explored, well, what is that success look like
mm,
for you? Like, what do you want to be when you grow up?
mm,
Kind of thing. And for him, he just really wanted to be important
mm,
mover and shaker in his community.
mm,
He wanted to be seen as somebody who was helping move his physical community to something better. And
mm,
he's like, I don't know how to get in to do that. Like, how would I do that? Like, I'm not, I'm too young, I'm
mm,
inexperienced. And we just explored, tried on lots of things. He had lots of job interviews while we were working together. And he eventually decided to open a business so he and his wife could work together. They opened a business where they're doing art education for kids in their community.
amazing.
So he's got opportunities to work with all kinds of kids, all kinds of parents, but he's making this, it's art, it's enriching, it's beautiful, it's uplifting. And he's like, I just feel like all of a sudden my light switch was turned on, at 35. And he's like, I guess I had to kind of have some of those stymieing
Mhm.
moments to know, like, oh, this this is the thing. I'm starting down the right path. And
That's
that's
beautiful.
thrilling to hear. But
Yeah.
then, I get 50-year-olds who are thinking the same thing, or,
Mhm.
I've achieved, I need a new mountain, or
Yeah.
I want to climb the mountain with my kid. How do I bring him along? Or, I've always wanted to do this, but
Mm,
it feels silly, or I don't know, like, could I make a living doing that? And when we take time to really explore, a lot of the answers are yes.
mm,
Yeah, that is possible. Or there are other people who are doing that,
yeah.
but you've never got to meet them. You've never
Yeah.
got to connect with those communities. And sometimes that can be really fun when you find like your tribe of people, your
Yeah.
community where you're like, "Oh, yeah, you didn't fit into this other thing either." And we're blazing our trail together.
That's really important. Yeah, finding one's community. We had a guest on yesterday, Michelle, who she advocates for people with disabilities, and she works in the educational model. But she had a real struggle in education herself until she found her community of writers. So I just wanted to like
Yeah.
emphasize that that important of going out into the unknown and kind of exploring like more because we're multi-dimensional beings in a lot of ways, right? And we're not always given the opportunities to explore some of these talents and gifts that might be hidden if we don't,
Yeah.
kind of go into that exploration. So much of what you said, reminds me of,
Yes.
what I've learned in my own, development and exploration. And also this idea of never being too like we always need to grow. in every
Mhm.
decade it's a new chapter. One of our favorite guys has been Louise Hay, who, when she turned 60, that's when she started her publishing company, and when she
Yeah.
turned 80, she's like, this is going to be the greatest decade of my life. And I think that kind of mindset is really important, right? To
Yeah.
know
Yeah.
that uh, and this is one of the things I identified when I was studying in college for Indigenous wellness, is how ageist our society can be. Like, we
Yeah.
tend to
Hmm.
prioritize this and it's a blurred line, right? Whether people are in their 20s, 30s, maybe 40s,
Hmm.
like this
Hmm.
idea of the high point. But children are segregated as not really being, super important until they're age of majority. And then seniors, once you
Uh-huh.
get to a certain age, they're segregated as well. And it's not holistic, right? It's not the idea of this community frame that we're meant to live in as human beings. So I
Yeah.
appreciate that you're helping people kind of find their tribe. It really reminds me a lot of what I like about our school community and school in general, because Gary Vaynerchuk talked about, in this time of great change, where we can all leverage technologies like AI to do a lot of the tasks that maybe we would have had to have a team before. We can focus more on our passions, so we don't need to maybe have a team. But he also talked a lot about how social media is dead, and how we're not connecting in the same way. People are looking
Yeah.
for more meaning. They're looking for authentic connections, and they're looking for their true communities. And so he talked about interest media being the new thing. People are going to go and, based on what they love to do, whether it's art education, like you said. That's a beautiful
Mm-hmm.
journey, by the way. I feel like this is the one thing that is undervalued, our creativity.
Hmm.
And I see this returning with AI kind of taking over a lot of the administrative work. People are going to be looking for, like, what do I really love to do? Like, maybe it is
Yeah.
painting, and I never tried painting,
Right.
so
Right.
I think that's beautiful, that especially with this young generation, having a connection intergenerationally with people is so
Hmm.
important, because these
Hmm.
things are getting cut from schools. Working in the public sector myself, a lot of teachers have, you talk about being laid off. I know in the government sectors
Yeah.
as well. So, we're in a time of great transition. What would be your top three, words of wisdom for people who are maybe facing that uncertainty? You talk about people having
Hmm.
worries, having fear of the future.
Yeah.
How would you, if you could offer something in this conversation, maybe if this is, the
Hmm.
thing that needs uplift them today, what would you offer as, like, some words of wisdom to move forward with grace?
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Well, I've I found that, the antidote to fear is facts,
Yeah.
right? Is learning and education, data. And for a lot of us, we're using data all the time, and that might be our profession, but then we don't do it in our
Hmm.
life,
Yeah.
right? And for us. And so I encourage my clients when I work with them, like, okay, let's really find out. Like, it might feel like that is true, but is it true? Like, when you were a little kid, it felt really true that there was a monster under your bed. But
Mm.
then when you were brave enough to shine a flashlight under there, there really wasn't. And so a lot of times that trying something new or branching out, talking to somebody
Mm.
that, I've never talked to somebody like this. What do I say? I don't have anything in common. And a lot of that is kind of pushing, turn on the flashlight. Let's
Yeah.
see.
I love that.
Um,
Yeah.
so I think for those folks that are caught in that fear, to to take a moment to look at the facts, right? For a lot of people, a lot of us, our careers have had a trajectory, right? Like we haven't most of us have not fallen off cliffs at various points of our lives. We've continued up, up, up. And so when you're facing a layoff or uncertainty in your job, that might not be a cliff. It might just be a little dip
Mm.
and give you an opportunity to do some of this reassessing. Like,
Mm.
am I on the right road? What do I really want to do? And to just take a little bit of time for yourself to reassess, like, are am I following my goals? What are my goals? Do I have them written down? Do I need some help
Mm.
identifying them? So I feel like I'm a little all over the place. So
No, I
one,
think, yeah,
data, right? Two, a little self-reflection, and you might need some help in that.
yeah,
That's hard to do by yourself. Sometimes really hard to do with people who know you and
yes,
kind of are
yeah,
assuming the answers. So I get some clients who are like, oh, it's kind of nice to talk to a stranger
sure,
because I'll just ask the question, or can you explain that? And they're like,
yeah,
I never get to talk about this.
yeah,
My wife
exactly,
already thinks she knows everything, right? Or
yeah.
my friend or my brother or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, people form beliefs about us, right? And one of my coaches put it well to me, like a jar can't see its own label, and that's part of the role of a coach is
Yeah.
seeing. And I think things
Hmm.
have evolved. I think that used to be the role of our grandparents. When we were young, they would
Hmm.
see us in community and they'd say, "Oh, you really are inclined to help with making foods, or
Yeah.
you're an
Yeah.
adventurer. Maybe you'd be a good hunter, or like
Hmm.
whatever." And so I think that our society has pivoted more to this idea of coaching, which is
Hmm.
important because, like you said, a stranger, they're coming from with no background, no beliefs about you. They
Right.
just want to
Right.
be of service, right? And
Yeah.
so that's very valuable. And I understand you have an offer with your coaching. Is that I was reading, like, people can connect with you in that way? And do you
Yes.
still offer a free session for people to connect with you?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes. So yeah, if folks are hearing this and feeling some of that itch of like, ooh, this might be helpful to me, encourage people to go to my website. It's very easy. It's my life, my biz, B-I-Z. So mylifemybiz.com, and that pops you right into a contact card, or you can also get to my calendar and pop onto my calendar.
That's
And we
great.
can talk about what's going on and what might be helpful to you.
That's amazing. We'll also put that in the show notes, Stacy, as well.
Great.
Even I've had one coaching session with someone new that's changed my whole perspective on things. So I strongly encourage you
Yeah.
who are listening, if you're feeling that inclination, you're like, I'm at this point in transition and I don't know, go and check out Stacy's work, and it really does help sometimes having a just a supportive voice that's neutral, that's there just to be of service. We need one another, right? This is the beauty of
Hmm.
humankind, is
Hmm.
we're social organisms, and we've kind of been conditioned with this idea of independence, which I think is an illusion. I think that if anything,
Hmm.
interdependence, we are, when we do take care of the inner work and develop our mastery, develop our the qualities of character that we need, but then we look to how do we contribute and make our communities a better place, like the young man you were talking about. How
Hmm.
do I also honor my own significance but contribute to growing our
Yeah.
community? I think those are important questions, and we don't always think to ask them until
Hmm.
certain points of our life, like maybe losing work or
You hit those bumps,
right.
right?
And
Yeah.
those are
Or you have a
often,
big life change and it's like, whoo, what am I doing? Yeah.
yes. I do you find that some of your clients, 'cause, for my
Mhm.
background, it's very normal to talk about the spiritual aspect of the medicine wheel as being part of our soul, our journey as a whole. Do you find
Mhm.
that a lot of clients, like, for them, these transitions are often related back to like a spiritual essence, not so much religious or anything like that, but is there deeper meaning that is given, or is it more focused on business and goals and things like that? Or is there a marriage between those?
Yeah, well, I think for a lot of us who kind of come from corporate world, we're taught like that's got to be separated, right? So I
Yeah.
have my home life where I might have, spiritual life. I have different types of friends, and then I'm a different person at
Hmm.
work
Hmm.
and totally different and put on those masks. And for a lot of folks I talk to, that wall is starting to crumble. And they're
Mm.
like, Can I just be myself?
Yeah.
Can I take my whole self to work? How do I do that?"
Yeah.
And so sometimes it's kind of that, okay, what would that look like to merge those
Mm.
two beings together? Well, what would you do?
Mm.
What is what is your mission? And for a lot of folks, like it's, well, how do I take these great skills and expertise that I've developed in the working world, and can I put that towards something that has maybe a little more meaning, or
Yeah.
bring people in that I haven't gotten to work with? And that can be awesome to think about, like, oh yeah, how do you bring your whole self? How do you
Yeah.
marry those two halves that we've had lots of practice dividing? How do
Yeah.
we bring that together?
Yeah.
So yeah, that happens even to like the hardened VPs of finance that I talk to, who are like, what, like, why am I doing this?
Mm.
Right? I'm like, oh, there's probably something deeper, right? That we need
Yeah.
to talk about. Yeah.
That's
I love
beautiful. Yeah. The question of meaning. Well, I mean, my whole background has been really, I think I started from the backwards end. Like I came from, because I had profound spiritual experiences in my early 20s and leading up to my 20s, actually. And it made me question a lot of things that I think a lot of people don't start questioning until their 50s or 60s, and they start having what, people call
uh-huh.
the midlife crisis. And I
Yeah.
started realizing there was something deeper for all of us. We say we're spiritual beings having a human experience, but I think we're spiritual beings having a spiritual experience that is just in the form of human. But what is our role really as a species? I've been wondering this about my whole life, and what I've come to, and it's my limited perspective from this point is it's very reflective of what that young man came to. Is we're here to be stewards. We're not here to be dominators. We're
Mhm.
not here to,
Mhm.
control others or anything like that. In fact, those are all expressions of the ego drive. But when we are really in alignment with who we really are, we realize that we're all interconnected and that we all have a role to play in uplifting those around us if we take on our true nature. I feel, which is, I believe, is founded on the universal creative power that is love itself. And it's something we all know as infants, and I think we kind of get covered up with beliefs
Yeah.
and conditions and self-esteem issues, and we start wearing masks and compartmentalize,
Mhm.
like you said,
Mhm.
and I've experienced this myself. You go to work and you're the professional, and you go to
Yep.
your family, and maybe you're having personal challenges, and then you go to whatever church or a synagogue or something, and then you
Mhm.
you put on another, like, I am, I am this, and I really feel
Yeah.
like there's this yearning in so many people that I've met who are looking for real community. They're looking for connection with who they really are, and also their
Mhm.
their purpose and the greater meaning of things. And then how do we co-create that which we are all yearning for? That's really the purpose of what we're doing,
Yeah.
why we're doing what we're doing, Stacy, and connecting folks like you, because
Yeah.
we all do
Yeah.
have a role to play, because we still
Yep.
need to learn the business acumen. We still need to be able to flourish and thrive in the marketplace and the way the world is, but we also need to be grounded in our
Mhm.
authentic purpose and not taking on other people's purpose that might, think they know what's best for us, like you should be a lawyer, but when really your heart wants to be a figure skater or something. I don't know. Right?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I think that, having meaningful work, I think work is part of that,
For
right? That
sure.
we feel good when we're doing stuff. And I get a lot of people who are like, why am I doing this? Like, I
Mm,
like to work, but I don't, like, what am I doing?
mm,
Am I building anything? Am I bettering anything? Is anybody different because of all my effort? Happy to
mm.
do the effort, but what is
Yeah.
happening? And so we need to just point that in a different way, right? And then it becomes like, oh, well, maybe I don't mind rolling up my sleeves, or putting in the hours, because I know what's happening, or I know it's for a certain season, or I'm in control of that and I can
Mhm.
say when to stop. And that can be really exciting, exciting to pull others into too with you.
That's beautiful. And you've mentioned a couple times, you talked about the seasons and also like these cycles that we go through.
Yeah.
Just recently, I realized, in taking on the entrepreneurship game, that there's this kind of underlying pressure in this the wholeness of our society to just keep pushing, the hustle
Mhm,
culture.
mhm.
And what I recognize is that, we do have these seasons, we have these rhythms. It's first talking about first principles. Rhythm is an important part of how all of life functions. So how would you, meet someone differently who maybe is, going through a winter period in their career and life and needs that rest and recuperation compared to someone who is maybe, you know, uh, in their summertime and things are hot and they have all these clients and there's lots to do, but it's not rest time, it's not harvest time
Yeah,
yet. And so
yeah.
how do you meet people differently in your work?
Yeah, well, I think as odd as it sounds, like the first step is figuring out what season you're in,
Hmm.
because sometimes we're really out of touch with that too, of am I in a planting or harvesting or like, it's winter time and I can take a little bit of a break. And so, you know, a lot of times people are used to that grind
Hmm.
and then something happens, they're laid off or something they have a life event and they're like, well, who am I, what am I like, I don't know what to even do with myself. So figuring out like, okay, you know like, is the universe just giving you a moment to
Yeah.
figure that out? Like,
Yeah.
that's okay.
Yeah.
And kind of coming to terms with that. Um, and then again, I think, we tend to set goals and then think that's my goal for
Yeah.
the next 80 years. And it's like, that's not like that. What are your goals right now?
Mm,
What does your family need? What does your community need? What do you need
yeah.
right now? Like what are those important things? And being honest about that those are my goals, those aren't society's goals or my
Mm,
corporation's goals. And then, okay, then we can kind of align, all right, what's the plan? And the short-term plan might be really different than a long-term
mm,
plan, but I think sometimes even getting into that, like, yeah, we might be on the grind, or we might need to keep that job for a while to hit certain markers to allow for a longer term or a bigger idea to flourish. And that's all good to know
mhm.
why. Why are we working? We're working towards a goal. We're aimed in the right direction.
Yeah, all
And
of
that
this.
is relevant for now, right? Yeah.
Yeah, I love that you bring it back to the now. It reminds me of, what Eckhart Tolle talks about with respect to purpose. A lot of people are thinking, why am I here on earth? What's my purpose? And they're thinking of this grand ultimate
You're right.
thing
You're
that
right.
happens way distant in the future. When, he talks about like, well, if you're serving tea to somebody, that's your purpose. And it's like, and I like how you make your goals about
Mhm.
the relevancy of what's going on in your immediate environment. Maybe
Mhm.
maybe right now you need to go take a spa day and regulate your nervous system so that when you come back to your family you are grounded and a little bit more at peace with
Yeah.
things. Or no, I really appreciate that, Stacy, and there's a lot of gold I can see. We don't always see the work that goes behind the scenes in terms of cultivating, like whether it's a coach or a guide or someone, and all the framework, all the investment that they've made in their own work and all that they've learned to come. So I can see a lot of your wisdom poking through there. So I appreciate that.
Cool.
And
Good.
and it's important, right? We're in this
Mhm.
time, like we've talked a lot about how much change is going on, and there are a lot of people who
Yeah.
are fearful. And
Well, we're
something,
seeing this model to us. Our organizations are doing this, right? Like a business doesn't pick a 10-year plan,
yeah,
usually it's a 2, 3, 5 year, maybe.
yeah,
But then we do, yeah, what is my life's purpose?
yeah,
Like I'll choose that when I'm 20 and
yeah.
I'll buy into that. But I'm like, we're seeing this, but we don't do it for
Mhm,
ourselves. And
mhm,
it can be really freeing to
mhm.
let go of certain things and then grab on to those relevant things right now
Yeah,
can be super exciting and motivating. Like, okay, I can get up and do things. I can keep facing life, right? When I know why. What am I doing? Why am I doing this?
Yeah. Yeah, that big why question. I think it's been the probably the word that you've used the most in this conversation. I realize how much, emphasis you put on it. It's very important, right? And what's interesting to me, I'm curious to your perspective on this because, we have a young going to be 2 in February, young little girl, super adventurer, super compassionate, considerate, always thinking and talking about others. She's really interesting. And I look at children as a whole, Stacy, and you talk about facing life and just the challenges of growing and showing up fully. And I look at children and how they don't know how to walk, and they courageously, like, they will keep picking themselves up and stumbling, and how they wear their hearts on their, just fully open, and they will cry when they're sad or angry, and they will laugh, and scream when they're joyful. Like, there's no holding back. And I feel like a lot of what we need to do to get back to a place of wholeness is to return into that kind of beginner's mind, whether you look at, like, from a Zen perspective, or this whatever spiritual philosophy you want to take. I mean, Christ
Mhm,
talked about this too. It's only through the eyes of a child that you can turn to the kingdom of
mhm,
heaven,
mhm,
which is really, what I understand. He was talking about a way of being, that we are in harmony with one another, and that our purposes are serving uh, our own upliftment, but also equally the needs and upliftment of other people. So I wonder how much, is that part of the work that you see happening too? Is that connection to the deeper, maybe that inner child? Maybe someone's been in a suit and tie their whole life, but really they wanted to play with color or something. Do you see some of these, like, pretty dramatic transformations happen in the people that you work with?
Yeah, well, one thing I do explore with some clients is, well, what did you really want to be when you were a little kid? Who did you see yourself? And sometimes, like 6-year-old Stacy did not say I wanted to work in a corporate insurance HR department, right? Like how did I get there? So figuring out, like, okay, well, what happened? And for some people, like, we'll talk about, they're a little shy to share, it might be, and I'm like, oh my gosh, well, you're kind of doing that,
Mm,
but in a setting like, so how do we lean in a little more? And then for other people, they've completely gone a different way,
mm,
right? And so it's like, well, are you happy with that? Do we need to pull back? Like, what was that little kid? What about those things, that profession, being a rock star, an astronaut, or firefighter? What about that was most appealing that you are missing? And for
mm,
a lot of, like, I had a corporate compliance officer, and he's like, I really wanted to be, I was fascinated with fire trucks and
mm,
being a fireman, and every little kid's dream, right? And like, okay, right now you don't get to help anybody.
mm,
Like, you're not seeing how what you're doing every day is helpful to the sales department, to the corporation, to any human being. You're
mm,
not seeing that. Do you feel like maybe that's a, he's like, oh my gosh, yeah, I'm totally missing. Like, even if I just knew, like, hey,
mm,
we used your report down here, or like,
mm,
this kept us out of trouble, or all
mm.
this research, because I never hear that.
Yeah.
And so that's like, okay, we've got to find a way to plug those things. But we wouldn't have really gotten there had we
Mhm.
not explored, like, yeah, well,
Yeah.
when you were not afraid to jump out of trees, and, you know, we're thinking about kicking down doors of burning buildings, like, what about that? Like, you don't need to be a fireman now in your mid 50s, but those principles are still there.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not helping anybody. I don't
Mhm.
see it.
That's so important. I think it's a beautiful exploration, and it's something that I think even our listeners can start to wonder about too. And what the image that came to mind is, someone at the fire station who just make sure all the equipment is in good order, which is an important part of being
Right,
prepared for the fires. But
right,
they never actually got to see any of the people that are helped. They just do that all the day, and they're just in the weeds of that. And
right.
it's
And
interesting too, because I'd imagine a whole other career could unfold from that. Like those feedback loops are what my experience in a lot of corporate worlds is it's top down, and often there isn't that good feedback cycle of
yeah,
communication. It's like the all the workers can do all this beautiful work, and then if it even gets to the top, there isn't
it doesn't
even any,
percolate up.
there's no
I'm like, you
exactly.
might need to leave your office and like talk to a couple people, right? Like, is this
Yeah.
helpful?
Yeah.
Um, there, there's that, and then there's like, I'm like, what if you just went and my husband runs a food pantry, so my
Okay.
suggestion is always like, find your local food pantry and go like
Mhm.
volunteer,
Yeah, yeah.
and you're like put stacking cans and
Mhm.
packing boxes. You are doing physical things that like, and then handing it to someone who goes,
Yeah,
"Oh my gosh, thank you!"
yeah.
Like, this is great, right? So sometimes we just need those
Mhm.
opportunities too.
No, I love that you take that approach too. It's reminiscent. I listened to a really beautiful conversation with Esther Patel, who talks about intimate relationships. I forget which podcast. She has her own podcast, anyways, and she was talking about like 50 years ago, our concept of a soulmate. Just to bring it into another frame here, was our relationship with our creator, however you wanted to define that.
Mhm.
And that was
Mhm.
where we got our whole kind of picture. And I still think that's really relevant, because she said, what's happened in the last 50 years is we think that we're going to meet that one person who's going to be everything to us. It's going to be
Mhm.
our coach and our lover and our housemaker and our build the house, and all that. We put so much pressure, and I think we do
Yeah.
that with our careers too. We put
Yeah.
all this pressure for the one thing to satisfy all our needs, when maybe we need to go out there and do some just community volunteer work that gets us out of our bubble and meeting new people. Or maybe we just need to go and try a new kind of hobby, or
Mhm.
go into your local
Side business, like there could
exactly.
be
Yeah.
really identifying, well, what is missing? Is it the challenge? Is it a puzzle to unravel?
Mm.
Is it the hands-on helping? Like what is it? Well, how could, and you might be able to accomplish a few different goals, right? I want to help my community, or I need some extra income. Like, well, could we also scratch a couple itches, right?
Mm.
And that sometimes that can be mind blowing to people too. Like, oh wait, like I could do two things. Like I don't have to find the perfect job. Like I could maybe
Hmm.
connect with a few different communities, like or stretch in a different way. And it's like, yeah. And for a lot of folks who like, oh, the kids are leaving, I don't have anything to do. Like,
Yeah.
have
Empty nest
some
syndrome.
time or some capacity, or I want to model this to my children. How do I do that? Like, can we think about what are those lessons, and what are you modeling to your kids too? That's a big part of who you are as a parent, can be really interesting.
Yeah, no, all that is so important, and there's so many dimensions to that. And I really see, as you've been talking, Stacey, this idea of career is not defined to one singular job. It's really a more of a
Mhm.
holistic thing. So, what would you define a career as?
Oh, that's a good question. Well, and I think you even said, in your intro, like for a lot of us, it hasn't been a linear process,
Hmm.
right? Like we've swirled here and there and tried lots of things. So with my clients, we try to pull back, like, well, what are those things that transcend industry and job title?
Mm.
Where I find for myself when I think about like, I've always been kind of a coach or that cheerleader. I've always
Hmm.
been a project manager. My family, even when I was a kid, I was a project manager. And finding those principles,
Mm.
well, I also really like doing those things.
Yeah.
So how do you find those, identify those principles, those capital S skills, and then well, how you apply those could be
Mm,
really creative,
mm,
and leaning in. So, one another thing I do with my clients is what is that career story? And often we see those threads. Well, in school, I always was the one who did, or
mm.
no matter what the job, I always do that, end up doing this. Like people kind of
Yeah,
smell you out and give you those jobs. What are those things?
interesting.
And then how are those marketable to a new position, but also usable maybe for yourself in a business or
Yeah.
a community organization? Well, if those are the things that you always do, a lot of times those are also the things that bring you joy.
Hmm.
How do we find ways to get more of that in your day?
Yeah, it's really valuable. You're definitely making me think of my own journey and all the 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 underlying themes that have been through a
Yeah.
lot of my roles. Because, like I said, I've done so many different things that are not always easy to see the interconnections. So,
But I bet you could pull those threads through, right?
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
definitely, definitely. Yeah, there's a lot of like creativity and teaching and also that community piece that you said, like just connecting with people on all walks of
Mhm.
life. I really
Yeah,
feel
being a
like
connector.
yeah,
Yep.
being a connector is definitely something that I have been. Yeah. Yeah, no, it's really wonderful talking with you, Stacy. I feel like it's a really timely topic for a lot of folks here in Canada too. There's been so many changes, politically, and I know in the college systems and university systems here that there's been a lot of transformative decisions that have meant some pretty major cuts to funding, and we've seen the first waves of some pretty big layoffs. So I think you probably are overflowing with potential people who need this kind of guidance. And I like that you've specialized in this way because there's a lot of quote unquote life coaches out there,
Hmm.
and I feel
Hmm.
like there could be a saturation in that market. But having specifically career focus and helping people develop a clear frame for that next transformative experience. Because at the end of the day, our careers where we show up and we contribute to society as a whole. And we're evolving, I think, as a
Hmm.
species in a lot of
Hmm.
ways. So there's probably several career opportunities that don't even exist yet that will be here in 5 years time or even
Yeah.
closer, and a lot of work that now exists that won't even exist in that
Hmm.
time frame.
Hmm.
So it's pretty exciting, and you're going to see a lot of that on the edge, right? You're going to see people kind of
Yeah.
going through
Yeah.
those transformations themselves. So what would you like to impart with our audience? I often ask, if you have a megaphone that you could talk to everyone in the world and everyone could hear you, what would you like to share with people?
Wow. Um, I think I would just really encourage people to know that your career can align
Mm,
with your goals. It is possible to marry up those different aspects of who you are
mm,
into one career, one opportunity. And we just often need some time to think about that, to reflect on what that looks like, and time to research and discover new things
mm.
that we might not have previously known are out there.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Reminding people of the unknown and the importance of embracing who we are and the potentials that lives within us, right?
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
that's really wonderful, Stacy.
Awesome.
Um, uh, I certainly do invite you to check out, if you feel inclined to, our school community, because I feel like that might be a really interesting platform for you to find people that are passionate and engaged and wanting to contribute. I found like
Yeah,
there's
lovely.
this whole undercurrent of people who are we're leaving a lot of the traditional social media platforms, a lot of the hierarchical organizations, and we're looking for like grassroots connections and community.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
I found that on school myself, and I I can only promote what I really sincerely in my heart feel is important. And so I would love to extend an invitation for you to come there in your
Perfect.
organization as a whole. They might even want to start a community. So if I can
Mhm.
assist you, because I see how you folks empower a lot of people, if I can be of service to helping you on that journey to empowering more people, I'd love to be a part of that. Um,
Wonderful.
yeah. And is there anything else you'd like to share with folks for today?
Yeah, I thank you so much for this great conversation. Yeah, this was really fun. Um, and I think a lot of times we have these ideas in the back of our head, I should work on this, or I don't know where to start.
Mm.
But I have a nagging feeling. I encourage people to take some action. So I'd love to have a conversation how I might be of assistance. Usually those are just really fun self-awareness raising, fun to talk to and tell your story to someone else conversations too. So I encourage folks to take a little action if they're
Yeah.
feeling that way.
I think it's really important, and maybe to take the sometimes people feel like there's a lot of people getting filling their inboxes like DM me, book a call or whatnot. Just so
Yeah,
people are
yeah.
clear, Stacey, this is like a complimentary coaching session. There's no pressure
Yep.
to
No
join a
catch.
program or
Yep.
anything. It's just
Nope.
and I can attest that I've had some I've been reluctant in the past to
Yeah.
and I've had some coaches that have just one-off wanted to help me, and there was no pressure sales at the end. Obviously, people can continue working with you. That's an option, right? So
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
amazing. I think that's a really beautiful gift. The gift of our time and our presence is so valuable. And I think in an age of more and more automations and things, it's going to be even more valuable. So thank you for offering that as a
Mhm.
service. We'll make sure that's in the show notes that
Great.
people can sign up for a free session with you. And yeah, I do encourage people to follow those actions. And you never know opening one door where it can take you when you open into the unknown, right?
That's
Yeah,
true.
that's
That's
wonderful.
true.
Well, to all of you in Philadelphia and the ones you touch, Stacy, your loved ones, I wish
Thank
you
you.
a wonderful New Year and happy holidays. And
You
I
as
hope that,
well.
yeah, I hope that to see you continue flourishing. And I know that there's going to be a lot of work ahead as the times change. So
Yes.
so really happy to have you on. And yeah, I before we close, I'd just like to invite our daughter to come up and say thanks for watching for everyone. And any last words at all?
No, thank you so much.
Thank
Yeah.
you,
Happy
Stacey.
New Year.
Happy New Year to you as well. Okay, I'm gonna invite Luciana up now.
The moon is right, the spirit's up. We're here tonight, and that's enough. Simply having a wonderful Christmas time. Simply having a wonderful Christmas time. The party's on, the feeling's here.
We wish you a
Happy New Year. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year! Can you say Merry Christmas, everybody?
Yeah.
Say it.
Happy New Year. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye bye.
Love you.
I love you.
We wish you a